Here we are. Welcome to another episode of the Dog on It Trucking Podcast. My guest this week, Mr. Chris Atkinson. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. It's great to be on here.
It's going to be fun. When you and I haven't chatted in, I got to think, a couple of years or maybe longer.
Yeah, it's been a while, and that marks my several years now in the industry. I guess the freight tech industry, but trucking more broadly for maybe 5 years now.
Well, yeah, you started out with an ELD developer or manufacturer. I'm not sure.
Well, we started out trying to. Actually, to go back and tell the whole story, we started out trying to offer a real enterprise-grade solution to the largest trucking fleets in Canada, and that solution was a hub and multiple sensors. And because it was a hub and multiple sensors, you were able to do things that other solutions weren't able to do with this hub. So you could measure up to 8 zones wirelessly in a trailer. You could handle tire pressure sensors. You could embed a fax machine into your truck very easily. So stuff that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do, create a hotspot on that vehicle. And after having built that out and looking at the industry and chasing after large enterprise contracts, the ELD mandate was announced in 2015. And it had taken about 10 years for the industry to get to about 30%, 40% penetration on telematics products. And that ELD mandate meant that it was going to jump within 2 years to 100. So just those numbers again, it took about 10 years for about 40% of trucking companies to have some kind of telematics product. And then it was going to take 2 to get the next 100. So it was a gold rush. So like if you were in the business, opting then to sell an ELD was just a really obvious choice. And that's why we started going after that. But our ultimate goal was to build a freight marketplace on top of our ELD subscribers.
Yeah. Okay, can you say that again? Your ultimate goal was?
To build a freight marketplace on top of our ELD subscribers. So we looked at the freight market. It kept becoming true that when we were trying to expand our product in the telematics space, people would want features that were more focused on improving their ability to optimize revenue per mile, their ability to source freight opportunities, manage freight opportunities, even embedded in a telematics solution. And what was really clear was if telematics data was this missing link that a lot of these freight management and load sourcing products didn't offer. So we thought, okay, well, if we can sell a low-cost ELD, we can build this freight marketplace on top of it, and that's what's going to drive real value for these fleets. That's what's going to help reduce empty miles. That's what's going to help people better identify what routes and what load selection is most optimal for their fleet. And that's what we're going after at the time, which is actually not what we do now, by the way, but that was sort of how we got to where we are now. Yeah.
All right. Well, what is FleetOps? This is the name of the company. What's your position at FleetOps? Let's start off with that.
Yeah, so, I'm the CEO.
The CO or CEO?
CEO, yes.
CEO. And what is FleetOps?
Well, we match truck drivers with shipments using vehicle data and artificial intelligence. That's your one-liner. We partner with ELD companies and build freight matching solutions inside of their ELD product. So I can't name everyone that we're partnered with. I actually can't name anyone we're partnered with. But there's a bunch of these ELDs in the marketplace that also supply a load board attached to their ELD. And in some cases in the market where you see that product, it's actually owned and operated by FleetOps.
And so tell me exactly, or not exactly, but tell me a little bit more about FleetOps, because I don't understand the concept. I used to be a dispatcher way back when. Are you helping me get loads for drivers?
Yes. So in fact, if you look at the suite of load board products, so if you look at like a load link or a DAT, what you might find as a dispatcher is okay, so you're sitting down at the beginning of your week, you have 20 trucks, and you've got 30 loads that you have to move this week across those 20 trucks, maybe more, maybe less. And you're trying to identify which truck is most appropriate for which shipment. You're trying to do this in a way that is optimizing for revenue per mile or optimizing for profit per mile. So doing this in the most elegant way possible. And then you're also managing all of the edge cases that occur along the way. So someone's late, someone's held up at the shipper, someone is trying to find some kind of backhaul opportunity that saves you the cost on empty miles. So if you're a dispatcher, you're using a telematics product, you're using ELD, and you're going to track your drivers using that ELD. But if you have a FleetOps solution embedded into that product, embedded into that ELD, you're also going to see what freight opportunities you should access, what freight opportunities you should execute on instead, or in addition to the ones you're already executing on. So we help with two things. One is optimization, and one is just sourcing additional loads. Probably to put it more simply, we run load boards. We run a network of them. We have a bunch of them live and in the market. And a differentiator with those is that they leverage the data from your fleet, and they also work closely with dispatchers. So it's not just sourcing loads, it's also handling a lot of that the workflow aspect of that.
So, okay. Some of this conversation went way over my head.
Sorry, we're a load board. We're a load board, Chris. Like we have a bunch of load boards. We run several load boards in the market, and those load boards they can be found inside your ELD. That's what we do.
Yeah. So let me say it in my words, and then you can say it in the correct technical words. You take a bunch of data from load boards, so you know where all the loads are. You got the GPS data and the information, so you know where all the trucks are for my company. Do you know how many hours are left on that driver, whether he can meet the deadline of that load being delivered, things like that?
We do.
So you're making my dispatch job a lot easier for me. Are you also making more profit for the company?
Yeah. I mean, we're going to find, so there's a couple areas where that works, but and there's a couple ways you might want to talk about. Two main ways are helping you proactively identify backhaul opportunities, A, and then B, helping you identify if the spot market freight or if a spot market load is preferable to when you have committed to, when you should take that action, when you should, look at that opportunity.
See, now you're talking a little more my language.
Cool.
Well, you got to remember, I'm a safety guy. It's been a number of years since I was last in dispatch. I used to dispatch, but goddamn, it's been a long time ago. And I think we used pencils and erasers the last time I dispatched. Certainly, I don't know if you're old enough to know about the card system that we used to.
I know about it. Yeah, I do know about it. I remember when we were first building the product, I spoke to a lot of industry veterans who spoke about how fantastic the card system was, and how actually a lot of this new technology that people there's some nostalgia about the card system. They were like, you need to recreate the card system, but digitally. Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure you need to recreate the card system, because the flaw of the card system, the way I see it, is it's only the loads that I personally knew about, or the loads that were given to my company to move.
Yeah.
Where you're doing it much more efficiently. You're taking not just one load board, but several load boards, and allowing me to pick. And this is, I'm imagining this is the way you do it. You would now allow me to pick the best load for making my truck the most efficient and cost effective that we can possibly do it.
Yeah. I can actually show you some stuff. I don't know if that's something you typically do.
Sure. You are.
Okay, great. So I wanted to just recreate some screens for you, because I have to, take out some information, but this is really exciting. There's imagine the load board experience that you're familiar with,
right?
and take a look at this. So in the screen you're looking at now, you've uploaded the freight that you have to take care of this week, right? So you've got several loads or a bunch of loads that you have to take care of this week. So you've uploaded that to our system, either through your TMS or through a CSV or through just tender files, whatever it may be. And our system is then indicating which loads are most appropriate for which drivers in your fleet. Like, it's creating routes, it's creating schedules. So that job that you have as a dispatcher, that card system, this is taking that freight and then it's helping you allocate it, helping you plan it. Now, I want to point out too, if you can see here under, can you see my cursor?
Yes.
So see where it says C2 recommendations? So this is showing you two alternatives to the load that you've already selected. And then underneath this person's name, you have when they're working, you have their vehicle type, you have their preferred rate per mile, how much time they have left in their shift, how much time they have left in their cycle. And I want to point out to something else here, which says optimize, right? It says optimize return. Now that means this particular driver in your fleet, they, generally speaking, want to come home as often as possible. So you're not optimizing for following the money, you're optimizing for some sort of return trip. I want to show you a couple other screens here. So one is you can move different drivers to different sort of lanes or different schedules. And then here, you're seeing the ability for you to just select and approve what loads have been built out by this sort of optimization system. And here's sort of the load board part. So if you look here, you have a backhaul that's empty, right? You can click that section and then you're going to bring up several different load options from the open market on the right-hand side that you can then select. So then you can very easily fill in what are those gaps in the existing schedule that are going to just improve operations for the fleet. So we're using ELD data, we're using fleet data, we're using your existing shipments to help you plan, but also to help you identify what opportunities in the spot market exist. We're sourcing those for you, and we've got a lot of great partners. Actually, I'm not even sure which of our partners I can mention. LoadSmart is one of them. LoadSmart is one of our partners that I can certainly mention. And some of the other large digital brokerages that you would be familiar with, we can, you'll find that freight in our system. So
a lot of what you do, I call it white label or brown paper bags. Well, when I worked in the insurance industry, one of our sister companies was exactly that. They were, their name was never mentioned, but they were the supplier of the service.
Right.
FleetOps is similar in that you're supplying the service, but you are integrating with different ELD providers. Are they your main source?
Yeah, that's right. So ELD providers were white labeled. And then on the other side of the marketplace, the broker side of the marketplace were FleetOps. Like, we go to market and we sell our services, and we sell this aggregated capacity package to brokerage firms. Yeah.
Okay, so if most of my listeners and viewers are trucking companies, so if I'm a trucking company and I wanted to take advantage of FleetOps, what would I have to do?
You would have to be using the ELD of one of our partners. You'd have to go using one of our partners' ELDs. Like, you wouldn't be able to access FleetOps, at least today. Maybe this will change. But you wouldn't be able to access FleetOps as FleetOps. You'd have to be using one of the products.
So I would phone my ELD provider and say, do you have access to FleetOps?
Well, it's white labeled, so they wouldn't necessarily say that they can or can't give you access to FleetOps. But one thing you should do if you want access to these features is tell your ELD provider that you want access to FleetOps. They won't tell you if you have it or not. But if you want access to it, that's one way to get it for sure. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if I was the ELD provider, if I had an alternative to it, because as a salesperson, I would say, well, why do you want such an item? Okay, well, here's our solution.
Right.
They're not going to say, hey, this is FleetOps. They might.
Yeah.
But as you say, you've white labeled it so that they don't have to. They are offering the solution.
That's right. So, yeah.
What?
There's only one, I'll say, like Keep Trucking's load board experience is Keep Trucking's load board experience. Like we have nothing to do with it. And that's also sort of just an indication of the fact that this is more becoming table stakes. Like a lot of ELD providers, if they're not thinking about building something out like this, I think that they probably should be. It's going to reduce your customer acquisition costs. It's going to increase your retention and your lifetime value of your customers. And we also have lucrative revenue splits with every ELD provider that we work with. So it's a great package to take advantage of. That's going to help ensure that you remain differentiated in the market and competitive in the market.
Well, I mean, we both know that trucking companies don't typically make 10, 20, or 30% in profit. So anything that adds to the bottom line is huge in trucking.
Yeah, there's a magic beans crisis in trucking.
Say that again. There's a magic
beans crisis. It's a magic beans crisis. So I think a lot of trucking companies have been sold the magic beans, like this is the solution that's going to solve all your problems, multiple times. And for that reason, it's really hard for a trucking company or a dispatcher or any operator to look at a new solution without any level of skepticism. To those folks, I say, being in Toronto has been a huge advantage for us. We've been able to recruit some fantastic AI engineers from the University of Waterloo. We've got access to really valuable data. But still, that may or may not be enough for you. You just have to try it out. But I think the main point I want to make here is it's nice to say that you can add that value, but you've got to prove it. We welcome the test, but we also know that there's a very healthy level of skepticism in this market because there's been a lot of vaporware and sort of less than fantastic technology solutions in the market, for sure.
Oh, well, I mean, not to compare this to an ELD solution, but there's been, most recently, that's the most recent thing I can think of is the ELDs, and it's been terrible.
Yeah.
There's been some outstanding ELD suppliers, and then there's been way too many other ELD suppliers.
Yeah, I mean, what is self-certification, right? Like that's ludicrous. And I think it's caused a lot of problems for a lot of people. And you're seeing more enforcement now, which is good. But there's a ton of ELDs out there that they don't have required backing to ensure that they're able to prop up the customer support that a lot of these drivers need and prop up the efficacy of this solution that a lot of drivers need. And that's challenging if you're in the market. Your strategy, if you are operating one of those ELDs, is to sell it at low cost. And if you're a driver and you're price sensitive, then that becomes a very obvious decision for you. And it's going to be true in many cases that low cost solution is fine and that it works really well. But there definitely are some operators out there that are providing something that is going to be less helpful to you. Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting when the Canadian mandate comes in and all the ELDs have to be certified to do what the government wants them to do. So,
yeah, well, Canadians love regulation, so I think it'll be. I think it'll go different. For sure.
Well, it's going to be fun. But so FleetOps, what else I've never heard of this service before. What else should I know about how your service, even though it's white labeled, how can your service assist me?
Well, I want to touch on another thing, which is one way we look at the market is about like democratizing access to freight. So if you're a trucking company that doesn't yet have access to some of the larger brokerages, if you're not yet onboarded with them, if you're not yet familiar with them, if you don't have a relationship there, we will, forgive the term broker, that relationship will help you get onboarded with them, will help you gain access to that freight. And another great thing is a lot of this more valuable freight that you would be seeking in the market, you'll find in these applications. So just the opportunity to source it is important. And then another critical thing is our ability to make recommendations. So we're using this data to help take that cognitive load off of the dispatcher a little bit and help identify when, where, why you should select an opportunity. Other than that, I try to keep it simple. Like we're a low board, we're a good one, we're easy to use, and we've actually done some work to make it fun to use, which we haven't seen some of these other systems do, and we'll also help you plan things out. Like we're a great tool.
Well, there's a couple of things. Like most, unfortunately, in a lot of trucking companies, the dispatcher is the least trained person in the whole company. And so it sounds like your solution really helps that individual make much better decisions.
Yeah, no, it's true. Some dispatchers are, they'll be more familiar with, some route optimization tools and some optimization tools out there, but the majority don't have access to those tools. The majority don't have access to that technology, and it's a really hard job. Like the market is moving, the trucks are moving. You're having to juggle problems that arise just that day, and you're also having to deal with the multivariate problem, which is trying to send these trucks on the right route and send them like with the right freight. Like it's actually impossible for a human being to do perfectly, unfortunately. Like because of all the things you have to consider, you just can't do it. It's not the human brain is not capable of downloading all those factors and analyzing all those factors, and that's why solutions like this are necessary and can help with that.
I think it's awesome because anything that can help. Well, I think of it from a driver's point of view. If your solution is going to help me, one, make more money and get me home when I want to come home, I'm like, as a driver, I'm all for it. And as a dispatcher, if I want to keep my driver turnover low, I've got to satisfy my driver and get my driver to make money and get my driver home when he wants to come home.
No, indeed. Yeah. So, or you'll be every driver's least favorite dispatcher. So,
right. Yeah. So if this solution is going to help me meet my objectives of keeping my drivers happy, it's going to reduce my turnover, which is another source of saving money. And your solution sounds like it optimizes my trucks so that I can make more profit per mile.
Yeah.
So I think it sounds pretty awesome. I wish I was a dispatcher again. No, I don't. I love my job.
Sorry? How long were you a dispatcher?
Oh, God, 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
I mean, I go back far enough that EDI was the acronym, and I can remember one day sitting in dispatch when the internet went down, and we got all of my information from my one customer. They were in Vancouver, I was in Brampton, and at 3:00 in the afternoon, that's when I got tomorrow's deliveries. And my internet went down at 2:30. And I had all my trucks waiting for this. I had to do my dispatch. I was there till about 10 o'clock that night because by the time it got all up and running, because I couldn't just say we're not delivering tomorrow.
No.
But anyways, that's how long ago it was. EDI, I don't know if that's a term that's even used today anymore.
It's not gone.
Okay.
It's not gone. But it's a really tough job also because you have to deal with the information requests from the other side of these transactions. Like you have to deal with the information requests from the shipper or from the broker, whoever you're working with, and that's really challenging. You're now dealing with drivers who are maybe reluctant to be babysat, and you're dealing with maybe shippers or brokers that want to babysit that shipment or need a lot of information from you so that they can appropriately communicate to whomever. So not only are you planning, but you're also handling all this back and forth communication as a middle person. And like with the solution like this one, I should mention, like you're also handling that. It's the ability to very quickly and easily send updates, the ability to quickly and easily handle back and forth documentation, like all of that stuff.
Well, it just sounds like what helped me as a dispatcher do my job, because we know in trucking things happen every day.
Indeed.
My load gets canceled. Well, I planned on that. I built my whole route for this driver around that one load, and all of a sudden it's gone. How do I satisfy my driver now?
No, exactly, yeah. And you're on the hook for that, right? It's 100% your fault that load was canceled.
Yeah. It always is.
Yeah.
Chris, anything else that you want to have out there in the world? Did we cover everything? Because I had never heard of FleetOps before, and as I say, being removed from dispatch,
right.
I was very curious as to what the heck all this is about.
Yeah, I mean, that's partially deliberate, but if you're a broker, we can help you move freight, and if you're a carrier and your ELD doesn't have a load board solution, tell your ELD provider to talk to FleetOps. But other than that, I don't have anything else.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris, and thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I hope you loved the show as much as I did. Please leave us a like, a thumbs up, a review, a comment, a rating if it is in your heart. Thank you so much. And I do really appreciate your time. And join us again next week for another exciting interview.